Coming up on CEO at USC, producer Eddie Barbini will tell us exciting stories about the television industry. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Christina Schoellkopf, and today we have Eddie Barbini, producer, and I'm so excited to talk to you today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're very welcome.
So I think most people are familiar with your work on Dirty Jobs on Discovery Channel. So tell me about how you even got into that.
Well, I was doing another show for the company that produced Dirty Jobs, and that show had just ended. And the producer, who was a friend of mine who I'd been working with for probably close to 20 years, said, "I've had this little show called Dirty Jobs. Are you interested in doing it?" And I was like, yeah, I guess. Let me see. Send me a tape. So they had done 3 episodes of this a year prior to me getting this job, and Discovery had put it on the shelf for a year. So they sent over the tape, and I popped the tape in my computer, and the first thing I see is Mike Rowe with his hand up the rear end of a horse. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. That makes pretty good TV.
And that intrigued you?
And that intrigued me. And I was like, any guy that would do this has got to be a good, pretty good host. And as it turns out, he's a great host. So I set up a meeting to meet him. And he came in my office and put out his hand. And I looked at it and I'm like, I'm not shaking that hand. No way. You don't know where that, I know where that hand's been. And
what was that even for?
It was for the, there was a horse veterinarian segment where he had to...
Hopefully there was a good reason.
Yeah, there's always a good reason in Dirty Jobs. But we sat down and chatted and talked about the show, and we became good friends and went on to do 5 seasons of the show.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And what is involved in terms of coming up with ideas for the show?
Well, in the beginning it was difficult to do the show because nobody wanted to get involved with a show called Dirty Jobs. Anything, we tried to get in restaurants, they didn't want any part of us because the word dirty was part of the title and they felt it would be bad for their business. So we had researchers. We had 2 researchers that would basically scour the internet and try to find interesting people, interesting stories. And that's really how it started. When the show became popular, it was easy. I mean, we still had those same researchers, but we had so many jobs that came in on the job sites, on the Discovery websites, that we had seasons worth of shows.
Oh wow, that's perfect.
Yeah, it got easier as the show became more popular.
Did you ever think about changing the name since you had some trouble with that?
Never.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it was always Dirty Jobs. As a matter of fact, Mike, when I first met Mike, we talked about Dirty Jobs, and his idea was, because he created this show at a small station in San Francisco. He did small segments called Somebody's Got to Do It. And he was the guy that would go out and do these things. And so anyway, we sat down and we talked about it, but his idea for the show was to do something really edgy, something 10 o'clock at night type show. And after watching the 3 tapes, I had 2 kids, I still have 2 kids, but I had 2 young kids at the time, and I thought, oh my God, kids would love this, especially little boys. They'd love this stuff. And I told Mike, I said, no, dude, I think this is a family show. And he goes, no, it's not a family show. He goes, I want to make it edgy, 10 o'clock at night. We got to get risque with it. So, it was a 10 o'clock show at the time. And over time, we started getting letters and emails from kids and families. And Mike started to see that and goes, wow. He goes, you're right. We actually, this is a family show. And he started to embrace that. And Mike can push the envelope a little bit, but he embraced that, and it was the smartest thing I think he ever did.
So where do you draw the line then, since he kind of was pushing for a little more inappropriate? How do you choose your content?
We choose the content what we think would make great television. The line gets drawn by the network. And there's always a push and pull with the network. there was one particular segment I remember. My executive on it actually runs Lifetime Networks now, and she was the executive on Dirty Jobs, and I remember calling her because we were doing a bull semen segment where Mike had to literally get semen from a bull. And
that's different.
Yeah, it was different. And you know, Mike can be Mike, and you know, he pushed the envelope on that one a bit. And I remember calling the executive saying, just warning her, saying, look, when I send you this tape, just understand, you might not want to put it on the air. I said, you want to put it on the air, but if you put it on the air, you're risking your job.
Oh, wow.
And she saw it and she said, you know what, I am risking my job, but put it on the air.
Really?
Yeah, she was a great executive. She was
good.
And you don't get a lot of that because mostly in television, everybody's afraid. They're always afraid of failing. But I think that, you know, with a show like Dirty Jobs, you really have to push the limits, you know, with anything in television, within reason. And that was just one show where you had the ability to do that, and you had a great host who was smart enough and funny enough and ironic enough to do it.
Yeah, he's got a great personality.
He does.
When you think about your work with Dirty Jobs, what are some things that Mike did that really stand out to you?
Oh my gosh, he's been in so many sewers, and oh God, I think probably the most memorable segment for me was a woman in New York whose toilet backed up. The sewage backed up through her toilet, so the entire neighborhood's sewage came up through her toilet and filled her entire basement. And he had to go in and work with a crew to clean that up. So yeah, that was pretty memorable.
What do you feel this exposes about how there are people out there that have these type of jobs?
Well, you know, I mean, I think Dirty Jobs celebrates that. That's why it's so successful.
Yes.
You know, I mean, and Mike was an apprentice, and essentially he never looked down upon these people. He really just embraced them. And I think it was one of the first shows that really embraced work, you know, and I think that started a trend in our business. I do a lot of work-related shows, but Dirty Jobs happened to be one that I was really fond of because I did a lot of those jobs through high school.
Really?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, because to have such a big interest in it, you must be a little adventurous yourself and really bold. What kind of things did you do in high school that were similar?
I did cement contracting. I did fence building. I worked with carpenters. I did every blue-collar job you can imagine. I worked in a gas station. But all those things were really sort of what trained me to do what I do today.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you find is similar about those jobs with what you do now?
Just knowledge about a lot of things. I mean, look, most of my programming is guy programming. I do a lot of testosterone-driven programming. And you have to understand those worlds, and you have to understand those people in order to work in that world. And I did work in that world, so I could adapt to it.
That's a good point. Knowing your audience is really important.
It's very, very important. Now, I was talking about it earlier, is that you know, as a producer, you have to be able to adapt from, you know, working in the swamps with alligator hunters to working with cops and FBI agents and kings and queens. You have to be able to, you know, sort of move between all those different worlds and do it with you know, with some style.
That is quite a range. Were you traveling a lot for the show?
Not for Dirty Jobs. I did travel very early in my career because I did a lot of police shows early on. So I did a lot of traveling for that. Occasionally I traveled for Dirty Jobs, but it was rare. The show basically was set up properly. It worked well. We didn't have many issues. Mike's a great talent. We had a great crew, great field producers on it. And you know, when you have a team that travels like that, it's very rare that it sort of goes off the rails.
Well, I just love hearing these stories. Is there any other Dirty Job moment that is just one of your favorites?
Well, I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but there was an episode where Mike was tired. He had done a lot of episodes, so we figured we'd have to give him a day off. So, but we still had to fill the order and and get a show on the air. So we did an episode where Mike's bosses had to go out and do his job for the day while he was in the doctor's office getting a checkup.
How did they react to that?
Well, I was one of them, and I had to clean porta potties for the day.
Wow.
The other boss, the guy that owned the company, actually made rims, which was kind of a silly job to do. But I got so sick after that job, I was in bed for almost a week with 104 fever.
Wow, and you think about people when that is their job.
Ugh, I don't know how people do it. I threw up 3 times on camera.
Wow.
See, I give it all for the show.
Well, you know what? Good for you. You have that energy and that drive.
It was an experience, but that was one of the most memorable moments on that show.
Do you feel that you've gotten really close, that when you're working with it, you got really close to Mike and with the whole idea of the show?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. When you have talent on a show, you have to be very tight with them. You know, because he's a producer on the show as well, and you have to respect, you know, his vision. It's his POV, essentially, and you have to just build great relationships with your talent in the business, because you're going to deal with them on so many different levels. You've got to protect them from the network. You've got to protect them from themselves. You've got to collaborate with them. And Mike and I have become really good friends, you know, over the years. We're doing a couple of projects together now.
Did you ever say to Mike, okay, Mike, I want you to do this? And did he ever say, no, 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 I'm not going to do that?
No, he's never like that. He was very, very collaborative, and he listened to everything. There had been times where I would say, you know what, I think we went a little too far on this. Or, you know what, I think you're being a little too earnest maybe in this episode. And he would totally take that as a note and essentially go with it. There are times where he pushed back too. I mean, we would do segments where I knew it wasn't going to clear the network.
Oh, really?
And, oh, yeah. And he would say, and I would send him a cut, and he would look at the cut and go, well, that's only 2 minutes of it. Where's the other 5 minutes that we shot? And I'm going, well, you know, man, I don't think they're going to approve it. And he goes, well, let's just send it anyway. Of course, they're not going to approve it because it is sort of X-rated, but he wanted to push those limits, and I appreciate that. That's the give and take that you have with talent and the production team. And
probably since he spent so much time doing those kind of gruesome activities, he probably wants at least to get some air credit for it.
Yeah, well, he does, and plus it really is good TV, and it actually is really funny. And
it's entertaining. It's
really, really entertaining, and there are some moments that never made it to air that were even more entertaining, that probably, if it was Showtime, you would have seen them. But because it's Discovery Channel, you know, it is a family network, so you've got to sort of pull back on some of that stuff.
When you would look back and watch the episodes, what would go through your mind?
Oh, I never watched a show on the air.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would watch a show 7, 8, 9 times in the course of it being edited. So by the time it was done, I was done with it.
What was going on.
I was done with it. But I do remember, here's a great story about the show. There was an issue with Mike used to go, oh, crap, all the time, or holy crap. And the network made us bleep crap. On the show, because somebody at the network felt that it was inappropriate. But every time we bleeped crap, it sounded like he was saying something else.
Yeah.
So we had this big argument with the network, like, this is ridiculous. You're really going to have us beep clap, but we got away with it. So. Well,
I'm excited to hear more about these stories coming up, but we have to take a break. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in a minute. Welcome back to See You at USC. I have a little bit of information for you guys. If you'd like to email us with any questions or comments, email at cu@trojanvision.com, or check out our Twitter at cu@USC. That is CUATUSC. And now we're back with Eddie. So I really would love to hear about the big range you've had, because obviously you've done reality TV, but you've also done some interesting stuff with horror independent films. So we have your trailer of Room 33, your independent film, and let us take a look.
Places like this always have stories.
This place ain't right, man!
Acetylenide. LSD?
You see something?
I don't like this.
No fear. What's wrong with all of you?
Is it room 33?
We gotta go now.
That is pretty frightening. Definitely get your anxiety pumping. You had a pretty interesting story about how you got involved with that.
Well, I was, it was one of those situations that probably every filmmaker in the world wants. It kind of fell in my lap. This actually twice has happened in my career. I was in the middle of producing, I think 3 or 4 shows at the time.
Busy.
Yeah, busy. And somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I got $100,000. Do you have a horror film that you want to make?" And I was like, "I don't have one, but I can write one." So I essentially wrote it in 3 weeks.
Wow.
While I was producing those other shows. And then when we went into production, we shot it in 11 days. And I would produce the TV shows till about 3 in the afternoon, and then at 3 in the afternoon I would go down to the set and I'd work until about midnight shooting the movie, and then I'd come back the next day and produce the TV shows.
You must have been exhausted.
You know, opportunity knocks. You gotta kind of jump on it. So I've done that a couple times in my career, and you know, Room 33 happened to be one of them.
Writing in 3 weeks is fast.
You know what? When you're forced to do something and you have a deadline, it seems like you get things done, you know, on time and on schedule. Deadlines are good.
What is Room 33 about?
It's about an old hospital and a group of roller derby girls and guys that end up stranded at this hospital, and it has some secrets that happened at that hospital years ago, and they're haunted by those things.
So you are definitely talented in many different aspects of this industry. How is writing for you?
Well, you know what? I don't consider myself a writer. I wrote that because I was forced to write that, and it was a lot easier. But I think that writing is definitely an important skill to have. I just don't have the patience to be a writer.
Yeah, that's time.
I have ADD, so I have to kind of like do a lot of things at one time. I can't sit and write or sit and edit. I have to be moving around.
Well, it seems great. What other things have you been working on that are some of your favorites that you've done?
Well, you know what? The truth is I've done so many shows in my career, and every one of them has a special place for me. I just love I love the business. You know, I love making television shows. I never thought I'd be doing this. I mean, I got out of NYU. I went to NYU Film School, and I got out thinking I was going to make movies. Somehow found my way into reality TV, and realized that this is a great place to be because it's a great business. You know, I mean, literally, I did, you know, last year I did 70 hours of television. The year before that, I did 60 hours of television. And I'm doing 3, 4, 5 shows at a time.
That is incredible.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm jumping from one edit bay to another, and all the different themes of the shows that I'm doing are different. Where can you say you can do that? I couldn't do that in the movie business. A movie takes 5 to 10 years to make. You know, here I get to turn stuff around in 2, 3 months, and you know, meet crazy people and you know, tell great stories.
What else do you find is different from the film industry with your specific television work?
You know, it's just production-wise. I mean, I still love the movie business, and I think eventually, someday, I'll probably do another movie or another TV show because I like drama. But I love the immediacy of reality. I love, you know, and I do a different kind of reality. I think what I do is probably closer to documentary than sort of a reality show. I don't do the Kardashians. I don't do shows like that. You know, there's more. Every time I approach a reality show, it's because I approach it from a dramatic viewpoint, because that's my background. That's what I was sort of trained at. And a lot of the things that I'm interested in are those types of stories. Dirty Jobs just happened to be one of those shows that wasn't like that, but the themes were great, and I love to find big themes in the shows.
Do you think reality is a little bit more stressful because it is obviously not scripted and everything is on the spot?
TV is stressful.
Oh, in general.
Period. But yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that the fact that you're trying to create stories out of real life is a really, really difficult thing to do, and it's a tough medium. You know, this day and age now, it's changing a little bit because a lot of the same devices that they're using in drama they're infusing into reality TV now, more so than ever. Years ago, it wasn't as much. It was more about process and interesting worlds. Now we're talking about conflicts and character arcs and all those things that you talk about in drama, we look at in reality. I've always looked at it in reality.
Yeah.
It's just that it's really kind of come full circle, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in order to get longer series out of these things, you've got to have character arcs. You've got to be able to follow those characters for multiple episodes. Otherwise, the process becomes really boring. You know, I did a show called Swamp Bloggers for Discovery, and you know, I mean, it's an interesting world. Guys in the swamps pulling logs out of the swamps. It's fascinating to watch, but that goes only so far. You know, so then you got to start looking at what are the conflicts that he has to deal with in his business. What are his personal conflicts, and you start to infuse the show with those things. So you know, it's a stressful business no matter what.
A lot goes into it.
Getting things on the air these days is more stressful. It's harder and harder to get them on the air. I think the networks are becoming pickier about what they put on the air, and I think the bar has been raised in the industry. You know, I mean,
how have you experienced that?
Well, I mean, bigger and crazier situations, crazier characters.
People want to see more and more.
More and more. And, you know, and in some sense, we've kind of gone off the rails a little bit because what's happening is you find a lot of reality TV being produced, you know, and a lot of producers put a really heavy hand on it. And I don't think that's good for reality TV. I mean, look, I think it's good for what it is, but I think eventually people are going to start to go, oh, well, that's such a bunch of crap, you know? People don't act that way. You know, alligators don't really jump out of the water and, you know, jump on your boats. They don't do those things. So we might be going back to basics, hopefully.
So since there are so many different levels and it has changed so much, and with the whole bar raising and everything, how has that shifted your goal at all when you're working on something, or what is kind of your mindset when you're going into it? What do you want the audience to get out of it?
Great story.
Just have a good time
great
watching.
Characters. You know, trying to sort of dig deep into something that to find where the life is in that particular project. You know, it's you deal with so many different worlds that each one has its own heart. You know, and I think that you got to find heart in all of these shows. I'm doing a show right now, which I love, that we're trying to sell about the boom town in North Dakota.
Yeah, I'd love to. What is going on with your new project?
Well, you know, this one in particular, I have a lot of them. I have about 25 different projects in development.
That is amazing.
And you have to, in order to get one or two in the air, you have to throw so many up against the wall in order for one or two to succeed. But this one particular show is about the boomtown in North Dakota. It's a town that sort of found oil, discovered oil, and it's a town it's a victim of its own success. I mean, literally, the town is overrun with an influx of guys looking for work, and the town can't handle it. I mean, it's you know, 60 men to every one woman in the town. It's infrastructure that's like failing. Crime rates have shot up like 90%, yet they have a 2% unemployment rate. So there's a great story there. You know, farmers are becoming billionaires overnight because oil companies are digging on their land and paying them, and they're getting checks for like millions of dollars a month. Wow. So there's just a great story to tell there, you know, and that's one we're working on right now.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice that some of the things you do kind of have a combination with entertaining people watching, and they're also learning something, which is nice.
And which is really sort of the rule of thumb for Discovery.
Yes.
You have to have takeaway information. You have to be able to watch something and walk away and say, I just learned something.
Yeah.
Because what's the point? You know, I mean, otherwise you just sit there and watch mindless television. You know, I think that the best way to learn is to entertain. You know,
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I did, here's a great example of that. I did 7 films for the CIA.
Really?
Yeah, wow. 7 internal films for the CIA, and these were big movies. They were trying to train their agents how to protect their secrets overseas. So we came to them with a different approach on how to do that, and we basically scripted mini movies. They were 45-minute movies that had characters and character arcs and explosions and shootouts, and it had a story. And then what they do after they'd watched the movie and they were entertained, they'd then go back and look at all the areas in the movie where that agent screwed up and may have given away information. And I had to be cleared at a really high level to do that of the government.
Wow, that is crazy that you are able to, you seem so talented with so many different aspects and different projects that are just so different from each other. So
just have to adapt.
That's
you know,
good.
I'm just fascinated with people, and I'm fascinated with stories and life, and I think that's kind of what drives me.
So if this is obviously for a college audience, what would you recommend to college students right now if they have this goal of being in film or TV? What would you recommend that they do now?
If they're getting out, I would recommend that they not be afraid of work. Because honestly, work hard and learn as much as you can about everything in the business, so that when you're sitting in my spot and when you're sitting in my chair, that when somebody comes to you and says, I can't do that, you know just from experience that you can.
Yes.
And I would say find a mentor. You know, I mean, I think if you find a mentor that'll guide you, you'll get there faster.
That sounds great. Well, I thank you so much for coming on our show today. Unfortunately,
Thank
we have to end this, but it was great talking to you.
Great talking to you as well.
And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I'll see you next time and see you at USC.